Some international schools already have a governance committee or similarly named committee. But you may be wondering, what's the function of a governance committee and how can it have a significant impact on the effectiveness of your board? In this video, we explore the functions of a governance committee, whatever terminology you use for that, and how it can help shape and steer the board, and in so doing, greatly improve the overall effectiveness of the board. So again, we can recognize that boards of international schools are constituted very differently, and many have owner boards or elected boards or appointed boards or various combinations. Regardless of the composition of the board, there can still be valuable insight from understanding how a governance committee might work in your particular situation. Non-profit organizations and schools that do have a governance committee typically identify half a dozen key responsibilities. That would typically include identifying board needs, identifying potential trustees, trustee appointment or the election process itself, new trustee induction, board evaluation and development, and the board executive functions or committee chairs or the board chair itself. As with all board committees, the governance committee has no decision-making authority by itself, as decisions are generally made by the whole board, other than those explicitly granted by the board. And its core function, therefore, is to strengthen the internal capacity of the board. So let's take a look at those 6 issues in turn. So the governance committee would be tasked with identifying the board needs, maybe reviewing existing trustee strengths and skills along with the anticipated needs of the school to ensure optimal board composition and preparedness. Usually it requires some kind of gap analysis by building a matrix of existing skills and qualities and comparing it against an ideal mix, a mix that offers skills and diversity. So for example, a board that's heavily composed of analytical finance people may have great financial insight for the school, but may lack the skills required to see problems from a legal, humanitarian, moral perspectives, HR perspectives, etc. Equally, a predominantly white male board may be missing the intercultural insight that a more diverse board could bring. While it's natural for people to gravitate towards other people that share similar backgrounds and think the same, it's not usually the most healthy of boards where actually diversity of thinking and perspective usually brings far richer insights into the challenges faced by the board and for the school. The second was to identify potential trustees, and it's much more relevant obviously for self-perpetuating boards. But even boards that have elected positions may still reach out to potential candidates with the skills and dispositions that they've identified as being desirable. So having identified these desired skills and dispositions to add to a balanced board, it would then be the governance committee that sets out to explore who may be available in the community that fit that desired profile, and then would consider the best ways in which the appropriate approaches may be made. The third was, if the board appoints trustees, then the governance committee would be tasked with reaching out to potential candidates, or at least identifying a strategy for how the approach would be made. After the person has been brought in and the arrangement seen as mutually beneficial, then maybe a formal recommendation could be made for the board for approval. If perhaps the board has an election process for trustees, then the governance committee may be tasked with the oversight of the actual process, the election process. There may still be a need to reach out to identified people that would be seen as providing the balance and perspectives desired for the board, and that person would need to be encouraged then to stand for the board elections. But obviously no manipulation or favoritism can be shown through the election process. This can be a tricky balance for an elected board that needs to be transparent and fair in the election process, but at the same time wanting to ensure that you have an effective mix of people that have been elected. The governance committee would provide oversight for the school administration during the election process to ensure that all of the appropriate procedures are followed correctly, and that the chain from nominations to voting and announcing the results is conducted according to the school's bylaws or whatever other guiding documents you have. The fourth aspect was the governance committee would be tasked with new trustee induction, to provide new trustees with the context for the procedures at the board and to act as a kind of mentor for the initial period. The governance committee would carefully craft an induction program for new trustees and helps ensure that those new to the board can really accelerate their effectiveness and impact. The induction program, much like this video series really, explains the different roles of trustees and may set this in context with the school's history, decisions that have been taken, and the nuances of how the board operates practically. The aim is to give new trustees sufficient insight that they feel comfortable sharing their own perspectives and opinions and understand what their role is and what the board work entails, so that they don't inadvertently encroach on the work of the leadership and administration. The fifth was the governance committee that provides mechanisms for self-evaluation, for board goal setting and board professional development. Board self-evaluation actually is very easy to omit, especially when the nature of the board's deliberations become focused on pressing issues, the fallout of dealing with hot topics, parental conversations, debate on issues such as COVID-19, etc. So the governance committee can take the lead when it comes to keeping the whole board focused on the school's mission, and then would take the lead role ensuring that there are appropriate board reviews that are conducted, and then that insightful feedback can be gained from that and fed back to the board. The committee would also look at previous goals that have been set and would report back regularly on the progress, and then would lead the process, probably tied with a strategic planning process and the head of school evaluation, to update the board's goals accordingly. And where the governance committee recognises that where there are inefficient practices, then they would recommend to the whole board some strategies or make suggestions for external facilitation to help bring the board's skills and understanding to an appropriate level. This may of course be internal, so for example, in recognising that the whole board is responsible for the financial health of the school, the governance committee may work with a finance committee to help prepare materials to ensure that all trustees can understand the nuance of the financial position of the school. The governance committee may be tasked with identifying potential committee chairs as well, and executive functions within the board. This is obviously much more personal and sensitive, but nevertheless, the effectiveness of the board is a function of the effectiveness of the chair and the individual committees. Therefore, for boards that want to be more impactful, deliberate strategies need to be in place to identify committee and board chairs, as well as mechanisms to prepare those people to be successful. It's not uncommon for a board or a committee chair to be appointed on the basis of a relatively informal nomination process, particularly in comparison to the selection process to join the board. The chair of a committee, and particularly the board chair, plays such a crucial role in building a team, setting the tone, establishing the norms, motivating the team, and leading the meetings effectively. And if the chair is being ineffective in this role, then a great deal of goodwill and energy and time is lost. For this reason, successful boards plan for the succession of roles to ensure that there's sufficient depth of experience. And the governance committee may be tasked with also defining position descriptions that identify these roles and responsibilities, so also set identified goals that go along with it. This can also be extended to include a set of desired attributes and skills, along with anything that may be identified from anticipating the future challenges, the challenges that lie ahead in the next 2 to 3 years. While the governance committee itself wouldn't be making the nominations or appointments, it would be helping to identify existing and anticipated needs of the board's leadership so that appropriately experienced people can be put forward in full cognizance of the challenges that lay ahead. Does your school have a governance committee? Are there any functions that have been mentioned here that could be built into your school's board that may lead to a more impactful board? How would you set about moving these ideas forward?